Hey, we are back with another episode, podcast, FU Friday. It's FU Friday. One of my favorite days where we say FU to as many people as we want based on some of the news reporting and some of the crap from the previous week. Today, if you can't tell by looking at the video, I am joined by another guest. BCP, good friend of ours, has been a friend for a long time. BCP, what is going on, my friend?
GM, good morning, JD. It's an honor to be here. FU Friday. I'm excited for this. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining. Excited. I know you've got a lot of opinions and thoughts on these things, so I'm excited to dig into that. Before we get going, do you want to share just quickly kind of what you're working on, where people can follow you and check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So BCP Blockchain Padawan. I am operations and project management for Probably Nothing. We built a mobile application called Zero for digital asset collectors. We provide a curated push notifications for all your favorite projects, a TLDR, if you will. You can check that out at probablysero.com and follow me on Twitter at BC Padawan.
BC Padawan. All right, bro. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Full disclosure, I'm also an advisor for Probably Nothing, but great team there, good friends of ours. And yeah, just happy to have you on. So today, it is FU Friday. So a lot of the things that we're talking about, we're going to end up saying FU in the end. And you'll get a chance, BCP, to FU to anybody that you feel is deserving of it this week. It's kind of tongue in cheek. We don't actually mean FU the way that the way that it sounds. But anyways, today we're talking a little bit about TradFi giants. We've talked a bit about that before, but they're entering the space and they're coming in droves at the moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about some regulatory uncertainty, Bank of America, talk about Barclays, and kind of how a lot of these major institutions are starting to change their tune. We're going to talk about some Gensler conspiracy. We'll talk about Binance. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. Bank of England. This one is my big FU for the day, so we're going to save this FU for last. But yeah, we got lots to talk about. BCP, you ready?
I'm so ready. Let's do it, man.
Let's fucking go. All right, we are back and we are live on Twitter Spaces. BCP, just make sure you unmute on Twitter. There we go. It's game on. All right. So just a quick follow-up. I usually do this before the video. Got too excited about BCP. Today, just a quick shout out to Safe Gnosis, the multi-sig platform. Pretty awesome. Love the merch. It's a great shirt. Got it at ETH Denver. So shout out to Safe. The other thing, we are a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Every day, except for like maybe a couple major holidays a year. But even then, I think we've done shows. I think we skipped Easter. That was about it. So we're here. We are on like episode 90 or something. The 100th episode is on July 5th. Excited. So in the meantime, if you can help us continue to spread the word, help share the insights and, just a daily dose of crypto news with friends, family, and people that are crypto curious, I would super appreciate that. Like, share, subscribe. Smash those buttons. And please, if you're on Twitter, either watching the replay or the live Twitter space, please bookmark that. It really helps with the Twitter algorithm. And we would appreciate it. Anyways, all right. So we are going to jump right into the FU for this week. So we've talked a little bit, actually a lot of it, about first BlackRock and then Fidelity and then Wisdom Tree and then Investco and Valkyrie with their Burr ETF application, which is hilarious. But there's a lot of actions that are happening right now against crypto projects and, crypto adjacent projects and crypto adjacent banks and all of this stuff. There's been a lot of like a flurry of crap happening. And in the meantime, while BlackRock, specifically Larry Fink, has really been a detractor from crypto for the longest time until just very recently, I think in May, in his annual letter started talking about how crypto is here to stay, yada, yada. And now we see BlackRock, the largest institution in the world, asset manager in the world, is now applying for a Bitcoin ETF. Seems kind of strange. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going on about all of these enforcement actions, and market dump was to get to a point where these guys wanted to enter. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think there's a lot of macro headwinds, but it's one of those things we all said for years, when institution, when enterprise, it's here now and everybody seems annoyed by it. I don't think it's totally horrible, but I actually think it's great, especially in terms of getting more activity and more adoption from, kind of the middle of the adoption curve. But I do think it comes with some challenges. And but before I get into my opinions on that, BCP, where are you at on this one? Do you love that BlackRock, Fidelity, Valkyrie, all these guys are coming in with a vengeance, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's hard to love it, but it's also hard to not see the upside to it. These traditional institutions entering into crypto signal to me that regulatory clarity is around the corner. And if it wasn't before, they're all in the right pocketbooks to really expedite that process. I mean, I may be on the more conspiracy theory side of things, but we may not always be happy with the outcome, but clarity is better than regulation by enforcement. I'm a big fan of games of all types, but in order to really truly play a game, you have to know the rules. So let's get the rule book out there, game on, MFers.
Game on, motherfuckers.
I think it makes some of the price action and news cycles over the last year or so a little bit more suspect. But yes, there's some negatives and some positives, but I'm with you. Regulation is something that we need, and it's coming whether or not we like it. So sooner is better than later.
I've been banging on this drum forever. Anybody that listens to the show, hey, Evie's here. Sup?
What's up, Evie?
I've been banging on this drum forever, but I mean, we're not going to love it, but it's happening. So we might as well embrace it, figure out how to deal with it. And let's pitter patter. Let's get at her. We've all been sitting talking about this for what seems like years now, probably has been years. And here we go. My challenge with this one, and I'm interested in your opinion, BCP. My challenge with the TradFi giants coming in is their intention is to protect shareholder value. That's their fiduciary responsibility. They're massive global institutions. They have a lot of leverage, a lot of lobby influence. They have a lot of the firepower that is part of the reason that crypto was established in the first place. And what they've done is around traditional finance over the last couple of centuries is they've built a moat around entrance into the market. If you want to enter into TradFi currently, it's a very onerous process, very expensive, takes a long time to get all the approvals. Crypto was kind of born out of that barrier to entry, because if the barrier to entry is too high, it really stifles innovation and leads to more monopolistic actions. So my concern with this whole BlackRock, Fidelity, all of this stuff, I think net it's a positive. But I do think that we as a community, as people building in the space that have been here for a minute, we need to make sure we don't roll over and play dead and just allow that land grab to win. Right? It's going to be a land grab. They are going to be relevant. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of assets coming into the space using them as a conduit. Having said that, we need to keep our foot on the gas pedal if we're building and want to service US persons. Otherwise, it's going to be a hell of a lot more of the same if TradFi comes in and is the only influential voice over regulation, et cetera. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's net positive? Although we know it's coming, do you see any of the concerns the way that I do, or what are your thoughts, BCP?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think those concerns are very real, but unfortunately, I'm not sure what we can do to stop this train at this point. It's really just so reacting and responding. I mean, like any other market, when the big boys come in, they come in with the ability to move the lobbyists around and to push the gas much faster due to having just much bigger pockets. But the thing that they don't necessarily have is the ability to be quick and agile and nimble in the way that smaller startups do. So that's where I think some of us have the opportunity to jump into that race and really compete. But yes, I agree. Those are very real risks, and that is likely going to be our reality in the very near future. You have to stay scrappy and find ways to compete.
That's a really good point. Agility, especially in an emerging technology market, is really, really important. And so, yeah, let's not lose sight of that. I think that's a really good point. Although I could probably talk about this for the entire episode, we'll move on a little bit. Still along the same vein with respect to regulation and some of the uncertainty in the US. Bank of America, of course, has come out with an opinion on regulatory uncertainty. As you can imagine, it's consistent with all of us. All the major institutions are saying, hey, our counterparts are starting to participate, but we still don't have clarity. This is a messy situation, especially for banks, which are different than hedge funds and investment advisors. They have different rules, different responsibilities. And Bank of America is no different. I'm sure they want to participate. We've talked to them many times for different reasons, but I know they want to participate. They're slowly wading into this space, whether it be from investment banking perspective or supporting M&As, et cetera, et cetera. But they did raise a really good point that digital assets have underperformed the NASDAQ since May. Now, they're making the claim that it's due to regulatory uncertainty. Yeah, that's probably a part of it. But at the same time, I think there's many other factors that have impacted crypto. We had a pretty crazy blow off top, I think, to a certain extent, market in 2021 and into the early months of 22, I guess. And there was just a lot of, it's a normal cyclical decline, I think, that we're seeing. We're in the depths of a bear market. This is not financial advice, so please don't take it as such. But generally speaking, if you look at historical performance of asset classes, as long as they're legitimate asset classes, if they really underperformed one year, often, unless there's some existential risk to said asset class, the following year, they're one of the better performers. Like bottom quartile mutual funds or investment funds, as an example, end up being top quartile the next year, which is kind of crazy. They underperformed, but as long as they're properly managed, they end up doing okay. So we'll have to see what happens. What are your thoughts on this? Like, again, BCP, I mean, a lot of the major banks have a similar sentiment in this regard, but where are you at on this one? Do you think that we should be catering to these financial institutions, and are we being done a disservice by allowing them to push the regulatory front?
I mean, what's the alternative? Are there ways that we can cooperate with them? I think would be the question that I would be asking if I were closer to the ground on these types of things. I don't see a world in which they do not pursue this avenue. This stuff is, to me, it's just all inevitable. So I think we have to just find ways to position ourselves to benefit from it as best we can and see if there can be something cooperative there. I think clearly their agendas are going to be a little bit different than ours, but if generally the goals are similar, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I think is how that saying goes.
Yeah.
If pushing against the same things, maybe deep down some of those goals are a little bit more nefarious than we would like them to be. But I think we need all the firepower we can get to some degree when we're going up against big dogs like regulatory institutions.
Amazing. Just a quick shout out to 3P Officer. Not sure what that stands for, but welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, bro, I'm totally with you. I think there's probably some slightly nefarious intentions. Nefarious maybe being an incorrect word on my part, but I think a lot of these institutions are, at this point saying, holy crap, crypto's not going away, even with all the SEC stuff. There's a lot of jurisdictions globally that are starting to try to find ways to embrace it, to engage it. And America should be no different. I think their challenge relative to our intention is that they're not really interested in impacting the intermediation and the rent seeking that they've been able to capture for all these years. So that's going to be like prying it out of their cold dead hands, I think is the phrase. So they want to keep the status quo as much as possible and take the efficiency gains for themselves as a corporate entity, where we, and how crypto started in the first place, of course, we all have entrepreneurial incentives here. But the whole point of this was to try to disintermediate, bring more transparency, more trust via trustlessness, and a lot of efficiency gains and cost savings and easier access globally for people. I'm not sure that the incumbents have that intention. Actually, I'm sure they don't, because again, I said before, their goal is, and their fiduciary responsibility is to maximize shareholder value. And losing major revenue streams to an emerging technology will hurt shareholder value unless they find a way to participate and or block that erosion of profit from themselves. So hopefully we don't see that, but who knows? One other one on a major bank before we move on. I guess he's not part of the major bank anymore, but what was his name? Bob Diamond has come out and said exactly the same thing. The sentiment, I think, from all major banks in global jurisdictions is kind of the same. Hey, crypto's not going anywhere. No matter how hard we've tried to snuff it out, it's here. Enough people want to use it. Majority of the electorate is interested, or at least thinks there's potential in crypto as long as it's managed properly. So these guys are all saying, hey, like, if we want mainstream institutions to come in, regulation has to happen. And they're Bob Diamond and Barclays are now praising some of these other institutions for now trying to enter the space and pushing for clarity, because I think it's one thing when unknown startups or small startups or industry specific startups are pushing for regulation, like Coinbase and others. But when major influential global financial institutions are pushing for regulation, I think they have a little bit more influence. So it's good to see at the very least. Any thoughts on Barclays, or is that just kind of more of the same for you, BCP?
I mean, I think to me it's more of the same. The last point you were speaking to, I think, was more US based. Barclays clearly has a little bit more global of a reach. And I think, I think some of those opportunities that you were speaking on in your previous points are more relevant for the emerging markets and the unbanked. And, in the US specifically, I don't think those same opportunities necessarily exist. Like, there are still plenty of opportunities for innovation with blockchain technology, but some of the more traditional finance, banking focused type activities, I don't necessarily know that there's a massive need to replace that in the immediate term when we have access to some of those products. We may not love them. We may not love the people who are running them. And I think we should still continue to fight for our way of doing things. But, I think those opportunities are not necessarily as pressing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I might personally push back on that slightly and suggest that I think it's not that we don't have amazing products in the US. And most Western jurisdictions are advanced economies. The challenge is, like, how many layers of fees and intermediaries and all of these other kind of, I call it rent-seeking behavior, because it kind of is. You make all of these crazy structures and very hard to understand compliance restrictions and all of these things. And you have an army of attorneys that are making a killing. You've got all these investment banks and consultants and all these people that, because of the complexity, can seek rent in all of these processes. And hopefully, even in the US, blockchain technology brings a greater degree of transparency. So at least you know what you're paying. Because in many cases, it's bundled and very hard to discern what things actually cost you. And secondly, it can build a little bit more trust. I mean, we're seeing what happened with Silicon Valley Bank. We're seeing what happened with Signature Bank. And there's so many others, obviously, that we've talked about on previous shows. But I mean, a lot of that stuff happens where you have very little oversight. You really didn't know that Signature Bank was in trouble, and there was no way really to verify that other than what they reported to regulators and to you. And although they maybe incorrectly reported to regulators, that doesn't help you out when the bank goes insolvent. Now, of course, the federal government stepped in and backstopped deposits, yada, yada, blah, blah. But all of those things are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what could happen if things go sideways. Anyways, okay. One of my big consistent FUs recently, and I mean, probably today, just like every other Friday, is Monsieur Gensler. Right now, he's facing, some criticism, to say the least. About some of the meetings with SBF and what that looked like, and some of the comments that he made. And again, I think it's a little conspiracy-esque to a certain extent. But it doesn't look good. It kind of smells a little bit stinky. And, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, might be a duck.
I was going to go with where there's smoke, there's fire. But yes, I mean, you had Ceara on yesterday, and he was making some really good analogies to how these things enter into sort of our space as memes. They start out as, theories, conspiracy theories, they become memes, and then people forget them. But I mean, there has to be something here, right?
Yeah,
If
like it seems a
Republicans
little
are going
odd
at it.
because SBF was like this close. For those of you on Twitter Spaces, I'm showing a very small distance between my thumb and index finger. They were quite small. They were that close to essentially being king made to issue and transact digital assets in America. And a lot of that had to do with, as we saw, incredible amounts of money being spent on political donations, on lobby, on, who knows what some of the private gifts and different things. I know they have to report them, but who knows what actually happened. And so that's a little bit suspect. I think it seems a little weird because of how bad FTX was and what the contagion effect of FTX collapse was and all the other businesses. And I mean, there's billions of dollars that just evaporated due to the mismanagement at FTX. And given all the frequency of meetings and the public accolades of FTX by all of these regulators, it's very alarming that they had no insight to all of this, or at least claimed to have had no insight to all of this until after it happened. And that's concerning, obviously. So they're speaking specifically in this particular case about a Zoom call between Gensler and SBF, which I think is probably quite suspect. This is early 22, even prior to Terra Luna, et cetera. So understandably, I don't think crypto was quite on the radar the way that it was after Terra Luna, et cetera. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Bankman-Fried is really in for a bit of a ride here, I think, in terms of trying to defend himself against some of these allegations with the different witnesses coming forward and all of these things. I think he's got an uphill climb, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with Gensler. I mean, there's been a lot of pushback even from Democrats about what Gensler is doing. So hopefully he pulls his head out of the sand, either gets on board and starts working with industry as opposed to against us, or hopefully something happens and we can replace the guy. So today I say, F you, Gensler.
I will join you in a firm FU to Gensler.
Beauty. And again, I mean that a little bit playfully, but I mean, come on, guys, like pull your head out of the sand. This is happening whether you like it or not as regulators either. The space is going to exist. So the only decision here is, do we want to prevent the US from being a meaningful participant in the space, in a very influential, likely wildly valuable emerging market? Or do we want to sit on our hands, try to make some money off this enforcement actions and allow the US to not be competitive and allow all these other countries to have a head start? I think the answer is absolutely freaking not. Okay. We talked a little bit yesterday about the UK revoking, I think it was the UK revoking a license that they had previously provided for money transmission to Binance. And similar, they were deregistered in Cyprus. And of course, Binance has all the problems with the SEC in America right now, to the extent that Binance US has now, in fact, frozen withdrawals and transfers as they were requested to do from the SEC. Binance is, in a little bit of hot water. But at the same time, Kazakhstan has said, hey. We somehow were able to ignore all the crap that you're doing elsewhere, or all of the allegations elsewhere, and they've given them a new regulated approval for an exchange in Kazakhstan, which is a bit of a nothing burger. But I kind of want to say a little bit here, like F you to Kazakhstan, because what? Like, I mean, not that Kazakhstan is a huge influence globally, but I mean, it's kind of strange. Like, I'm surprised until some of this stuff has had the full dose of sunlight shed on it, why people are still engaging. Do you love Binance, BCP?
Do I love Binance? No. Do I think Binance going down would be a net negative in the short term for everybody? Absolutely, yes. I mean, they're a giant. They're global. It's hard to hate, the public-facing persona that is CZ and the way that he operates. I think, some of the more recent information that has come out gives us some pause. And causes us to wonder, causes me at least to wonder, is everything above board? Are they operating correctly? Are they custodying funds in a responsible manner? I hope the answer to those questions are yes, but I'll be curious to see how this plays out. So I don't necessarily love or hate Binance, but they're a major player in this space, and it's hard to ignore them no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I've said this for a long time. I actually thought that it would be unlikely that there would be a full Binance implosion. And I still think that is probably the case. That I don't think Binance is just going to die, but I do think that there's probably going to have to be some significant restructuring of how that entity operates, especially if they want to participate in Western jurisdictions. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's very difficult to figure out the web of corporate structure and who actually makes the decisions. I mean, anecdotally, CZ apparently is the ultimate dictator of Binance. Apparently, can't quote me on that. That's just kind of what the buzz is. And apparently there's been, or at least they've been accused of making some really, really poor decisions with customer funds and taking absolute unnecessary risk, allowing some unfair trading practices, among many other things on the platform. So at the very least, I hope that shit gets flushed out. I'm kind of tired of this centralized entity being completely mismanaged because we don't have regulation in a meaningful way. So net, I think, good on regulators for taking a pause on Binance until they can prove that, they are a legitimate operation and deserve to be here. Hopefully they figure that out before they implode, because to your point, would be pretty ugly if Binance was just to disappear. There's not really any global entity that's positioned properly to succeed them. So we'll have to wait and see.
It's an interesting perspective you take, and it's not one that you commonly hear from people that spend a lot of time, working in and around blockchain technology in the U.S. Who said, good on regulators for putting a pause on it. I mean, if there's something there, yes, that is exactly why those entities exist. Are they potentially doing their job and we just don't like it? I mean, that's a possibility that I think we all have to acknowledge, despite how much it might hurt in the short term.
Yeah, good. That's a good point, man. Like, I mean, if there were clear rules, nobody would be complaining about this. If the rules were clear and there was speculation that Binance had broken them, then nobody would be complaining about this. They would actually probably be applauding it. But the problem is right now is that there's been no movement, no activity, no responses to groups like Coinbase and others that have asked for guidance, while at the same time they're going after Binance for all of these potential rules. And it seems on the surface that that's just predatory to the space. If we had clear guidelines and then they were doing this, I think it would be applauded. So, I mean, I guess I'm trying to remain slightly positive. I do criticize a lot of the moves of the SEC and regulators globally, but in this particular case, I think they're probably doing the right thing. Again, until hopefully Binance can prove innocence. I mean, I would love to see that. Obviously, hopefully they can they can provide evidence to the extent that, this isn't the case and what they've been accused of isn't happening and we can move on. But we'll see. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Bro, we're like really taking our time here today. We're doing good. We're going to have to skip over a couple of the items, I think, because we're bumping up on time. But lastly, I can't not talk about this one. Bank of England. So we've praised the UK a lot lately for their willingness to engage the public, their willingness to treat crypto assets as their own asset class in many ways. And it's been very interesting to see how that's evolved. What I don't love is today, the Bank of England, or today or over the last couple of days, but the reporting this morning was that the Bank of England now really wants to encourage innovation by way of a digital pound. But the reason I have to say FU here is they're under the guise of protecting against bank runs. They're going to put daily withdrawal limitations depending on your income levels. And those rules can be a very easily moved target if governments want to exercise that power. And I've been saying this forever. Any central bank digital currency in my opinion, is a very, very slippery slope for abuse of government power. And this, like, they're just coming out and saying it. Like they're already saying, hey, we're going to do the things you guys probably don't want to do from day one. And that's our intention. And here we go. What are your thoughts on this one, my friend?
I guess I respect the transparency. I don't know if there's necessarily a way to put a positive spin on this, but at least they're telling us what they're going to do and allowing us to prepare for it to some degree. I mean, you have to think, if the Bank of England is going this route, that other, especially Western institutions, will look to them for some inspiration as to how they structure something like this. So it's not something you love to see necessarily. I think the FU might be warranted here. I'm with you on this one, 100%.
I mean, I understand the requirement to report P2P transfers and different things.
Mm-hmm.
In the EU, under MICA, and I can't remember, Ceara would know the statistics specifically, but in the EU, I believe it's 3,000. They're suggesting that $3,000 of a P2P transfer requires an identity reporting. It's $10,000 for fiat in Canada and the US, as far as I know. I think it might have been reduced slightly in the US recently, but in Canada, it was 10,000 for the longest time. But it's just a reporting thing. I don't love it. I think it is somewhat an invasion of privacy, but I understand. What they're trying to do is they're trying to, find ways to prevent money laundering, find ways to prevent transfers to people that haven't been KYC'd or that are politically exposed foreign people, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it. I understand why. But there's a lot of criticism that has been applied to digital assets and how they're so much more likely to be used in illicit activities. And actually, it's not the case, in my opinion. There always will be a component of this that of any means of transaction. There's always going to be a component that is used for illicit activities. Fiat, of course, is the same. But the difference between fiat and digital currency is there is a trail for digital currency. You can, in fact, trace the movement of money. With fiat, especially cash, which is how most illicit activities are undertaken, short of having like trackers and different things in the cash, or having human beings follow people around to try to figure out where this money has moved, it's really hard to do that. And so there's a lot of shade being thrown on digital assets. I think it's, this is one of those circumstances where it's like, okay, exactly what we predicted was going to happen. Power grab and ultimate control and a moving in of the nanny state is already happening before there is a CBDC in the UK. So with that, I say FU to the Bank of England. Today and this week, you are my number one FU. BCP, my friend, excited to have you back another time. It's been a lot of fun. Quick reminder for everybody that's listening, live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 Eastern. We're on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter Spaces, Twitter live video. We are all over the freaking place. Like, share, subscribe, help us spread the word. And with that, today, I say to you, BCP, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.